He never left. This looked like a joke. Illumination forgot about the moment the credits rolled on the first Despicable Me. Vector steals the moon, Gru shrinks it back down, and Vector gets flung into orbit still clutching his shrink ray, drifting off into space with nothing but a stunned look on his face. For over a decade, that was it. A punchline, a freeze frame, nothing more. Then in 2023, right before Migration hit theaters, Illumination quietly released a short called Mooned, and it picks up exactly where that joke left off. Vector is alive, stranded, building a camp out of moon rocks, arguing with a minion who somehow ended up there with him, and slowly losing his mind waiting for a rescue that never comes. A Martian shows up. A group of minions passing through offer him a ride home. He's so busy chasing his own plan that he barely notices they were trying to help the whole time. The short ends with him, back to zero, still saying his signature line, still a failure, but alive. And that's the part fans missed for years. Nobody asked what happened to him after the moon gag. Illumination did. They tracked one abandoned punchline for over a decade and turned it into an entire short film with its own ending. Vector wasn't erased. He wasn't forgotten. He was up there the whole time, and somebody remembered to go check on him. They never die. Every Despicable Me movie throws minions into situations that should kill anything alive. They get crushed, blown up, frozen, dropped from airplanes, mutated with a purple serum that turns them into snarling monsters, and hit by lasers strong enough to level a building. And every single time they walk it off. For years, fans treated this as a cartoon logic joke, the same way nobody questions why a coyote survives a cliff fall. But Pierre Coffin, the man who created them, voices every one of them, and has directed the franchise since the beginning, was asked directly whether minions can actually die of old age. His answer settled it. Minions are immortal. They do not age the way humans do. They simply keep existing, generation after generation without decline. That single confirmation rewrites everything the franchise has quietly shown for over a decade. The minions who serve Napoleon in the prehistoric prologue and the ones dancing behind Gru in the modern films could, in theory, be the exact same characters. Not descendants, not new generations replacing old ones. The same beings walking through centuries of human history, switching masters, surviving extinction events that wiped out dinosaurs and empires alike. It reframes the comic chaos as something stranger underneath. These aren't just indestructible sidekicks for a joke. They are ageless creatures who have been quietly watching human history unfold since before recorded time, and the franchise just proved it on the record. They were never born. If minions never age and never really die, the obvious question follows right behind it. Where do new ones come from? The films show hundreds of them, all different heights and personalities, but never once show an egg, a birth, a nursery, anything resembling reproduction. For years, this got waved off as a gag. Cartoon creatures don't need biology explained. Then, Coffin was asked the reproduction question directly, and instead of inventing an answer, he gave the honest one. There isn't one. Minions do not reproduce. They just exist. That is not a writer dodging a plot hole. That is the actual stated canon of the franchise, coming from the person who has final say over what these creatures are. It means every minion on screen, from the earliest ones booing to a T-Rex to the ones cheering for Gru today, did not come from parents, eggs, or any biological process the audience would recognize. They simply are, and apparently always were. That detail turns a background joke into something closer to a mystery. A species with no birth and no death isn't behaving like an animal at all. It's behaving like something that was always here, filling out a population that never grows through nature and never shrinks through time. Coffin didn't just answer a fan question. He confirmed that minions exist completely outside the rules every other living thing in that universe has to follow. The cave saved them. Once you accept that minions are ageless and endlessly loyal to whoever seems the most powerful, a darker question shows up fast. Across thousands of years of human history, some of the worst people who ever lived would have made tempting masters. The films get ahead of that problem before it becomes a real issue, and the answer is a cave. The opening of the Minions franchise shows the group living in near total isolation for enormous stretches of time, cut off in remote, frozen landscapes, following a string of failed and often accidental masters rather than actively seeking out power for its own sake. Big chunks of their history simply are not shown, and the ones that are focused on slapstick misfortune rather than global influence. That gap works in the story's favor. Instead of raising uncomfortable questions about where a devoted, world-spanning species was during history's darkest chapters, the films quietly keep them boxed into their own isolated pocket of misadventures, cut off from the wider world for centuries at a stretch. It's a clean piece of storytelling math. An ageless species with no fixed loyalty needs a reason to stay harmless, and isolation does exactly that. The cave, the ice, the years spent stranded and searching for a boss worth serving, all of it functions as a built-in explanation for why an immortal population never became a real historical force. It's not an accident. It's the fix hiding in plain sight. The egg was real. When the Super Mario Bros. Movie ended in 2023, the credits rolled on one final image. A single egg sitting quietly in the Mushroom Kingdom, cracking open just enough to hint that something was about to hatch. At the time, it read as a wink to longtime gamers. Yoshi has been Mario's companion since the 90s, so putting his egg in the final shot felt like a nice bit of fan service and nothing more. Plenty of viewers assumed that was the whole joke, a nostalgic nod that would never actually pay off on screen. It paid off. The Super Mario Galaxy movie brought Yoshi into the story as a full character. Not a cameo, not a background gag, but a companion who travels with Mario and the crew into space for the sequel's central adventure. The egg wasn't a throwaway reference tossed in for people who'd notice it and move on. It was a direct setup for the next chapter of the franchise, planted years in advance and paid off exactly as promised. That's a rare thing for a post-credit scene to actually do. Most of them tease something vague enough to mean almost anything. This one pointed at one specific character, one specific role, and delivered precisely that outcome when the sequel arrived. The egg wasn't a joke about Mario lore for people who'd get the reference. It was the actual blueprint for where the franchise was going next. Peach was sent away. The first Mario movie never explained one obvious question. Peach is human, but she rules a kingdom full of mushroom people, and the film glosses right past why. She mentions growing up alone, arriving in the Mushroom Kingdom as a child, with no memory of another life, and the story moves on without digging further. It read like a gap the writers didn't think anyone would push on. Fans pushed on it anyway. The sequel finally goes back to fill that gap in, and it does it through Rosalina, the celestial guardian introduced as Peach's connection to the wider galaxy. The Super Mario Galaxy movie ties Peach's arrival in the Mushroom Kingdom to a warp pipe and to Rosalina's own story, giving her origin actual weight instead of leaving it as an unexplained detail from the first film. This isn't old video game lore being pulled off a shelf. It's new movie lore built specifically to answer a question the first film raised and never closed. That distinction matters. It means Illumination noticed viewers were asking why a human princess ended up ruling a kingdom of mushroom creatures with no explanation, and instead of ignoring it, they turned it into a real emotional thread involving family, distance, and a journey she never chose. Peach wasn't just dropped into the story as a convenient human lead. Her mystery got picked back up, and the answer changes how her entire arc reads. The prison exposed it. Every villain Gru has ever faced technically loses by the end of their movie. Vector gets launched into space. El Macho gets buried under his own volcano lair. Balthazar Brat gets covered in bubblegum and dragged off in cuffs. The Vicious Six get turned into rats. On the surface, that looks like a clean ending every time. Defeat, capture, roll credits, move on to the next villain. Despicable Me 4 quietly proves that was never the full story. Late in the film, a prison scene brings almost every one of them back into the same room at once. Vector is there. So is his father, Mr. Perkins. El Macho shows up in his signature mask. Balthazar Brat keeps his retro style even behind bars. Scarlet and Herb Overkill turn up dancing in the crowd, and the surviving members of the Vicious Six walk out of their cells to join in. None of them were killed off. None of them vanished from the story once their movie ended. They were simply sitting in the same prison system this entire time, aging, waiting, existing just off screen, while new villains took center stage. That single scene does something most franchises never bother doing. It answers what happened to every retired antagonist at once instead of just letting them quietly disappear. Illumination didn't need a montage or an explanation. One prison concert confirmed that nobody in Gru's world was ever really gone. Nintendo was next. The first Mario movie stayed inside one world. Mushroom Kingdom characters, Mushroom Kingdom problems. Nothing borrowed from outside that universe. The sequel broke that boundary on purpose. The Super Mario Galaxy movie sends Mario and the crew into space, and once the story moves beyond the Mushroom Kingdom, it introduces Fox McCloud, a character who has never belonged to the Mario series at all. He comes from Star Fox, a completely separate Nintendo franchise with its own galaxy, its own villains, and its own decades of history. Putting him inside a Mario movie is not a background cameo or a blink and miss it reference. It's a lead-level addition, treated with enough screen time and story weight that casual viewers who've never touched a Star Fox game still walk away knowing exactly who he is. That's the real signal buried in this sequel. Illumination and Nintendo didn't just make a bigger Mario movie. They started building towards something wider where Nintendo's separate franchises can share space inside the same universe instead of staying locked in their own corners. Nintendo has been careful about how far that goes, keeping the door open without promising every character under their banner will eventually collide in one giant crossover. But the direction is unmistakable. What started as one plumber's story quietly grew into the opening chapter of a much larger, interconnected Nintendo movie world, and Fox McCloud was just the first sign of how far Illumination is willing to take it.